see your screen. Yeah, you are good to go.
Okay, yep, thanks. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, based on the time zone you're listening this from. Before I start, I really appreciate you guys taking time and joining our today's event. There's a lot of useful content covered today, and I see a ton of value in it, as most of these scenarios we encounter them in our day-to-day projects. And cheers to Arpit for organizing this awesome event. Okay, with that being said, let me introduce myself. My name is Sharminderpal Singh. I work as a senior consultant in Hitachi Solutions Canada in Calgary. I'm working in Dynamics world for more than 5 years now, and it's been 3 years that I'm involved in portal projects. Over the time period of these years, I've seen this product getting matured with a lot of new features coming in and the transition of D365 portals to Power App portals with native integrations to SharePoint, Power BI, and recently we got Web API also. So with respect to my technical expertise, my cardinal strength is Power Platform. I have a good understanding on Azure DevOps, primarily on YAML CI/CD pipelines for Azure Artifacts, Dynamic Solutions, and Portal Metadata. I'm also familiar with OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect and the different nuances of the grant types and the response structure. Fun facts about myself, I'm a huge fitness freak and I love to do workouts and calisthenics. All right, yeah, that's enough about myself. Let's take a look at today's agenda. So my session is primarily oriented toward custom controls and portals. So what happens is sometimes while working on portal, we reach a point where we feel that we cannot get the desired result with the out-of-box configuration, right? But to our advantage, Portal has given us a lot of ways by which we can extend it, be it in JavaScript or in Liquid. So based on these concepts and the requirements that I found common across my other projects, I've built a set of controls which are very easy to use, and I believe they can be leveraged in any portal project by just using configurations. So these are the controls that I'll be talking about. We'll look at each of them in detail, and the way we will go is we'll see the problem statement first and how the control is trying to solve that problem. And I'm also planning to make these as open source, and I'll be releasing them soon on my GitHub. So I really would like to hear a feedback from you guys in terms of any improvements which we could possibly make on these controls. But before I deep dive into these controls, I really want to talk about how we can query data from Portal and just spend 10 to 15 minutes talking about different ways there and what adjustments we can make in order to have a single interface on Portal that can handle any data need for us, be it in JavaScript or in Liquid. So yeah, so that's the agenda for today's session. And let's take a look at our first item, that is how we query data. So this really depends on from where and how you are querying it. For example, if you are writing a code in web template and you're doing a Liquid stuff, right? And if you already have the access to the GUID, that is the primary entity ID of the record, then in order to reach to any of the attributes within that entity, you can simply use this entities tag and then provide the logical name of that entity with the GUID, and then you can have the access to that complete entity object set. However, if you don't want to go via the Liquid entities object and you have your custom filter expressions which you want to use, so there are two ways by which we can achieve that. The first one is to enable OData feeds on entity list. I personally don't like this option because this feed is getting exposed as an anonymous feed. So we need to be really mindful and cautious on the data that we are exposing, as it's not secured. And on top of that, another disadvantage is that this is getting exposed as an OData 2.0 endpoint, which means we cannot do complex filters, we cannot do complex expand queries. So there's a very limited value if you expose them via OData feed. And the second approach is where you use fetch XML tag within the Liquid. And from your CDS environment, you can really take or construct the fetch XML based on the data needs that you have. And you can go back on Portal, just put that fetch XML within that fetch XML Liquid tag, and there in the template itself, you'll get the response, and it's up to you how you want to consume that response. So you can build your control within the same template using that response, or if you want to consume it on client side, you have the capability to construct a JSON object which you can return by specifying MIME type as application/JSON, and it acts as a REST endpoint. So I'll spend a couple of minutes talking about this fetch XML tag in my portal, and at this point, I would like to move to my portal to show you that. So yeah, this is my trial portal. It's just having plain vanilla pages as of now, and I haven't customized it. So what we'll do is during the course of this demo, we'll create some controls, we'll hook them, and we'll insert them on these pages. All right, so let's take a look at the first approach, right? That was just talking about using the fetch XML tag. So really what we can do is we inserted a fetch XML within this query tag. And then once we got the response back, we can use this response to construct a JSON array. And this is returned as application/JSON. So this web template gets tied to a page template. Right, and then this page template is associated to a web page. So our web page is our, let me open that web page also. Right, so our web page is the final HTTP resource which gets exposed on the portal. So what does that mean? So that means when we create this web template, we can really use its partial URL to do a GET request on portal, and we can get the result back in our JSON format. So let me go ahead and do a simple query from console to this endpoint, right? So let's just do a fetch, and this is the partial URL that I just copied, and this is going to give me a promise back. And as we specified JSON, so I'm going to resolve this promise into JSON. And then within that JSON, the data I get back, let's just log into console table. Right, so you see, this gives, or this acts as a web interface, a REST interface, which you can use to get your data, and then you can leverage this data to do anything over it. Right? While this approach works well, but imagine if you're working on a portal project, right? And you have a lot of custom stuff that you need to create, and you need to consume it primarily on your client side based on some adjustments, right? User inputs. So if you go at this approach, you would end up creating a lot of web pages for your need, right? So I didn't like this approach. So what I thought is, instead of creating the individual or separate web pages for every request, why can't I create just single interface and just supply it fetch XML and the attributes that I need, and it should give me the result back, and I should be able to use it from my client side and from my Liquid also. So it's based on the similar thought process what Dynamics API uses. So we have a capability in our Dynamics API where we can specify fetch XML in a query string parameter, right? And then we can get attributes back by specifying them in $select, right? So yeah, taking this thought process ahead, I created one single web template which would fulfill my need. So I'm just going to show you that web template now. I call it fetch data service. Right. So what it does is it extracts the Liquid part and this JSON constructing part separate, and it can take any fetch XML as an input, and provided you have the entity permissions on the portal, you would be able to get the data back for that set which you have provided, right? And this is also linked to a page template, which is then again linked to a web page. So let's just run a query using this fetch data service and see how the response comes back. We have sample queries with me, so I'll use this query here, and we'll use console only. I'm just going to paste my fetch here, right? And then now I'll do a fetch request to my fetch data service. Right. So this fetch data service, it accepts two query string parameters. First one is fetch XML, right? Just like our Dynamics API. And then what we can do is we can pass that query to this fetch XML. And just in Dynamics, what we do is we encode our fetch XML before passing it to API. So the similar thing, we need to do it over here also. So I'm not using the out-of-box, not out-of-box, but native encode UI component because it adds too many characters. So I've just created my custom escaper and I'm just using that to, serialize or escape my input fetch. Okay, so now we have provided our fetch. The next attribute is to give the attributes that I want back. So let's say I want a name back, and then I want to get primary contact ID. Let's close this. This is also going to give me back a promise. I'll be able to resolve this promise. Let's just go here into a JSON and then use that JSON data. And this time, instead of logging it into a table, let's just directly log it. So, all right, I'm just verifying everything is good. Yep, so this gave me my data back. And the way I have structured it is you'll get an orthogonal array back, and each object will have two properties, column name and column value. So you can really just do a dictionary kind of a stuff, right? Where you find the element, if the element exists, then gets its call value, right? So you can do that, and we'll look at it shortly. But this gives you an orthogonal array back. You can use it column name and then column value to reach out to that attribute. And by default, if you don't specify any parameter over here, it'll just return you the GUID. All right, so yeah, let's take a look at one more example. I just want to show you that it works with any query without creating the web page. So I'll just write that query also here. Okay, so this is giving me back all the contacts that are having active status. So here also, I'll just do the same thing, fetch data service, and let's just use my tag and escape this also. And now let's provide our attributes. So let's say I want full name back, and then I want to get parent customer ID back, right? So these are the two attributes that I want back. And similarly, I'll resolve this into a JSON. So let's just format it, take it to new line. And then we can use the data returned from it and just log it here. Right, so yeah, so this should give me my data back, right? So it returned the data back. And one additional thing that I want to highlight is if your attributes contain complex attributes, for example, this parent customer ID, it's a complex attribute, right? It's of type lookup. So you have additional metadata associated to it. So the way I have structured my data service is that it'll give you the additional metadata back along with your normal GUID, right? So you'll get the name and you'll also get the attribute type. So the same is valid for pick list also. The only difference is there that you'll get attribute type as pick list, and your name would be the label of the pick list, and then you'll get the integer code back in the value. All right, yeah, so this is how it works, and I find it very handy, and I've used it across all of my Portal projects, and it just gives me a very handy way to query data from Portal without having to worry about writing the query again and again and creating the web pages, right? Just one use case where it wouldn't work is, and I want to highlight that as if you have a massively long fetch XML, right? Then you will run out of the standard query string character limit. So that's true for Dynamics API also. So in those cases, it'll break, but as per my experience, I haven't come across a scenario where we have to build that long fetch. But yeah, if you have that requirement and you're building that long fetch, then yeah, it'll break with that use case. But what we can do is then instead of calling it from client side, we can invoke the same fetch data service from Liquid, right? And still keeping the benefits of it and just changing our trigger point. So next, I'm going to show you how we can call it from our Liquid code, and we'll just generate a very simple custom content out of it and bind it to this page. All right.
Is it
possible
if you just go? Yeah, I was going to say, is it possible if you just run through that web service code again, just very quickly?
Right. So would it be helpful if we do it at the end of the session in Q&A?
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. All right. So yeah, this is my blank Liquid file, and here I'll consume that data service within my Liquid code, and we'll bind a sample control out of it. So yeah, so the query we will use in order to do so is this query. So just to give you a background about this query, this is giving me all the fitness clubs back that are open on that are having an open slot, and where the workout data is the value that we provided. So yeah, let's take this fetch and go back to our Liquid. Just write our extends and lay out one column. And let's override the main block of it. Right. And now let's consume our data service over here. So for that, let me just create one variable, capture variable, and I'll just say it clubs query. And within this, I'll put my fetch XML. Right, I'll just remove this condition for now because I'm going to use it in the other sample. So let's just run this query at the time. Okay, now I'll just create another variable to capture my result back. And within this capture, I'm going to call that fetch data service, right? So I'll just need to do an include statement and fetch data service. So that's the name of the template which I'm using. And here I can pass my fetch XML, right? I already have created that fetch XML. I'll use that here. And then just like in the front end, we were passing our attributes here. Also, we can specify the attributes that we want. So I'll just state SPS name or address. And then finally, one additional parameter here to just indicate that the call is happening from Liquid. Okay, right, so that's only I have to do in order to get my data, and this abstracted layer will handle the query and returning me back the response. So let's use this response now to construct something. I'm going to create a div, and let's create a script tag, and let's use jQuery's onload function. Right. And within this, what I want to do is I want to capture the result of this data service into my data parameter. So let's just use this code for it. And since I'm using it on my editor, it'll just give me a warning as it sees that this is not a valid syntax. So for the time being, I'm just commenting it out in order to have a proper IntelliSense. So now I'm just going to append something into this content div. Create one more div, and let's create the bootstraps list item group. Okay, so yeah, here I'll specify my class. I'll state that this is list group, and then within the HTML, so what I want to do is I want to bind this data to this HTML. So let's just do that. Use this data, and it has results, and let's map those results. Use this index. All right. Okay, and within this, I want to append my hyperlink and just call it my list group item. just to distinguish between the first element and the other elements, I'm just giving a random style over here. So if my index equal to 0, then let's use this background color. So I'm going to use blue color, right? And if just change the color to this one, and if it's not, just stay as it is, right? So within the HTML of this, let's add the final markup, and here I'm going to add h4 tag and just give it a class. So this will be my list group item heading. Let me just use the same style statement here. And finally, let's add the HTML. And here, the HTML, I want to get bind the data that I got back. So my data is available in this item. So I'll just use that. And this is what I was saying. So I can just check whether my item has the attribute with this name, right? Using this find. And if it has, then give me the value of it. And in case if you don't find, just print an empty string. So I'll just copy this and create a second markup also. And now this time I'll just use P, and here I'll use text. Let's just get rid of the style, and instead of name, and here also I'm going to use the same column value. Okay, so we have our template ready with our fetch data service consumed. So let's just verify I've not done any syntax mistakes. We pass fetch XML, select liquid, and then we have used that to bind our data. All right, so I'll take this back to my Visual Studio. Let's just duplicate this. Right, I'm going to create a new page. I'll just say it render clubs. Yep. Some portal and just paste the code that I just got from there. Right. So let's just save this and create a page template for it. In custom portal and rewrite type as web template. And there's a bug in this particular version that I'm using, that even though you select web template, the rewrite URL stays as required. So this shouldn't be the case, but it's just to get around it, I'm specifying test over here. So yeah, our control is ready. So let's go back, clear our cache. Yep. And then I'll just refresh it and then change the page template to point to the new one which we just created. All right, so we have this RPD. Oh, let's say I didn't make a mistake. All right, so I'm working on the sandbox portal, so they can be slow. By the way, there's a new experience available, Power App Studio, which seems to be faster than this one. Yeah. All right, so definitely I did some mistake, and we got the error. Okay, so let me just go back and see what did I do incorrectly. right? I just want to see that I didn't overwrite this fetch data service while I was opening it, so this is fine. And here, my fetch XML clubs query. Let's clear our cache and try one more time.
Hello.
Okay, so I definitely did some mistake.
Hello, Sharminder.
Yeah.
If you can scroll down, you have done 3 times equal to. You can change it to double equal to.
You're talking here?
Yeah, the colon.
Right. So yeah, this is the ES 2020 syntax. So I was using that, and yeah. So let me just try this thing. I'll try to log this and just see if this is giving me data back. We can come back later at this point. So all right, so we got our data back, and it looks like I did some silly mistake. Let's see. Data.results hash content. All right, this is my div. I appended it. So yeah, I think there's something wrong in the code part of it. So yeah, that's the reason it's not displaying over there, but it's giving us the data back, right? That was the main goal to see, right? You see, and we got these records. And yeah, so somehow this part is not appending it. So yeah, there may be some syntax mistake, which we can come back and look later on. So I just want to move to my other content, and yeah, we'll come back and fix this for sure. Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at the custom controls where the actual fun stuff lies. So to start with something simple, I'll just show you my first custom control. I call it a switch control. So what happens is on the out-of-box form, let me open the out-of-box empty form. Right, so yeah, the out-of-box form renders the bit options as these 2 options, right? And you can either represent them as a bit option or a checkbox. So what I thought is I don't want it to be represented as a radio button or a checkbox. I want it to be a switch control. So right now we don't have the capability to create PCF controls on Portal, but Microsoft has said that that capability is going to come soon in December. But since then, I thought as I can't create a PCF control for my Portal, but what I can do is I can create one in CDS environment, and that would generate the dynamic content for my Portal. So let's go ahead and see how we can use my controls and they will hook onto the form. So this is the model driven app that I've created, and I'll just go here. I'll just create my first control, and let's just name it form workout. And this is the PCF that I was talking about. We just need to specify the type of the form, the type of the control. It's going to be hooked on the form. So I'll select this, and this is the form on which I want it to work. And then I want to add a control. So this will give you the access to all the entity forms that you have. And then you can here see all the attributes that are linked on that form, and you can hook your controls on top of them. So I'm just selecting this attribute, and I'll just say switch control and save and close. And let's just save this. All right, so let's go back, clear our cache. All right, so you can see that control got changed and it got switched to this switch control, and with just a simple record creation in my CDS app. And then we may want to hook a custom event on the change of this, right? So I've given that capability also in my custom controls, where we can come here, we can click on the added control, and you see this on change handler. We can specify our JavaScript here, and I'm using the same Monaco editor that Portal internally uses and Visual Studio Code uses. So we can really just type in our code over here. So yeah, I already have the hook ready with me. This time I won't type it because we tend to make mistakes. All right, so I already have it ready, and I'll just paste this one, and I'll just change the class over here. Okay, so let's save this, clear our cache, and go back. Okay, and now when I click on it, you see our handler got hooked to it, right? Pretty cool. So yeah, so this is something which is writing back to the same data, CDS data field, and we can really leverage this to enhance the look and feel on portal and make our UI more rich. So this is something simple. It doesn't change the behavior. It just changes the layout, right? But going to my second control, this is lookup control. So I'll explain the problem statement of this first. So sometimes while working on portals, what we want to do is we want to take a dependent value on any other field that the user is going to input and filter our related data set based on that value. So we want to do it a dynamic filtering. So with lookups, you can somehow use, up to an extent, you can use the out of box cascaded option on the entity form, but with the other data types, you are limited, right? And sometimes in some implementations, what I've seen is we replace this as a drop down, right? And then dynamically remove the values. So while that approach works, but it's not a recommended way, right? Because that query is running on your onload and you're getting a larger data set back once you load it. So based on this requirement, what I thought is, let me create something custom, right, which can handle this type of scenarios. So just to give you that scenario again, let's say we are working for a Contoso portal, right? And Contoso has tie-up with different clubs. So as a member, I'll come here, I want to book my workout, and I'll select my workout date. And the intention is that it should give me the data back only, it should give me the clubs back that are open on that particular day, right? So let's see how we can do that. So I'll use the same query that I was using earlier. And the only difference here is we have one more condition over here. And the way my lookup control works is we can specify on which field this lookup is dependent on by just using the syntax field colon and then the logical name, right? And then we need to do is copy this, take it, go back to our PCF control, add another control. I'll just select the attribute. Yeah, that's club attribute, and I want to put a lookup over here. And here I'll get the capability to provide my custom fetch XML. And based on the fetch XML, it'll give me the ability to override my column names that are going to appear on my portal. So yeah, I'll also take the onChange handler and put it here. And this time I'll give it info. Save and close. Let's save this, right? Let's go back, clear our cache, and refresh this also. Okay, so let's just look at all the scenarios, how this control would behave. So right now I don't have anything filled on it, right? So when I try to render, so this is now rendering my custom control, right? And it'll indicate that either the configuration done on this control is invalid or a dependent field doesn't have a value. So I'm planning to change this to content snippet, so it'll be configurable, and instead of the static content, we can just put any dynamic value or dynamic statement which we want to include, right? So yeah, let's go ahead and say that I want to bring all the clubs for this particular date. And this time when I hit this, I get the results back. And just to showcase one other thing, this is completely responsive. I'm using the same classes that Portal internally is using. And in case you have modified the base theme and overwritten the classes, right? So it'll be automatically applicable to this control also. You don't have to write something custom for this. Yep, so let's select this. And yeah, so this lookup control change handler also got hooked, right? So this way I can really leverage these controls, and the requirements which appear to be complex, they're just a matter of configuration now, right? And our code does all the our control does all the boilerplate code for us and handles this stuff internally. And just to give you a background, I'm using the same fetch data service behind the scenes in either Liquid or in JavaScript to render these controls. So yeah, so that's the value of that control, and it's just a fundamental thing for all of my other controls. Okay, yep, let's move ahead to my next control. I call it a grid control. So similar to lookup, I sometimes have come across requirements where we wanted to use a custom fetch XML, right? Because the out-of-box entity list and the native CDS views, we cannot include sometimes complex filters, right? So however, out-of-box, we can't do that. So generally what we do is we create our fetch tag and we get the data back, and then we create the code to bind a grid, right? So I thought instead of redoing this thing again and again, why not to create a control that can just take fetch as a supply and construct any grid on top of it. So based on that process, this PCF handles that. So let me just create the second control for you for grid. It has grid account. All right, and let's just select this grid. This will give us the website on which we want to hook this. I'll say my custom portal, right? And let's go back and get this fetch. So this fetch is returning me all the accounts that belong at my level or under my level. So I'll just go paste it here, and just similar to our lookup view here, also we'll get the way to override the display names, and we can just specify it here, right? And yeah, so one other thing which is common across grids is that we want the first column to point to some detailed page. So we can give the partial URL of that page over here. I have it with me. Let me just get this. And all I need to do now is click on this generate template. Perfect. So it created that page template with all that liquid and fun stuff to render the grid. I can show you that record also. Yeah, so this is the web template, and yeah, it's generating this dynamic content for portal. So now what we can do is, all we need to do on portal is go back, clear our cache, and go to the page where we want to bind this control, right? So this is my sample grid page. And right now it's tied to the out-of-box page template. Let me just change this, and I'll just change to portal custom control grid and save this. Right. So yeah, it rendered the custom grid based on the fetch that I provided, and you see it's just looking like the out-of-box grid. You cannot spot any difference between this because I'm using the same theme that the out-of-box one is using, and it has all that search capability, everything included. So yeah, it's quite easy to configure. And let's say now we got another request that we want to include one more column to it. So all we need to do is go back, just come to this template again, just copy this, and add one new attribute, and let's say I want to get account number. So here, and then just do a save, right? So yeah, and let me just go back and see this got saved, right? That's saved, right? And now if I go clear my cache and refresh it, right? So yeah, it included my additional column. And on top of this, if we want to change the default sorting, right now it's ordering based on this name attribute. If I want to order it based on this contact attribute, all I need to do is come back here and use this order attribute that I have, right? And just change it to primary contact ID. So you see, we also get the IntelliSense in this editor. So yeah, it's quite useful to use it. And yeah, let's just see, it's primary contact ID only. All right, so yeah, I need to do this, update template, and this is going to update my template. I'll just refresh to see, yeah, change got persisted, and then we'll go back, clear our cache, and refresh it. Right, so now it sorted it on this contact column, right? So much like the out-of-box one where we can just configure it and our grid would behave. So I've just designed it keeping the configuration approach the same and just providing the flexibility to extend it based on our custom filters. And then if I click on this, it'll just take me to the out-of-box detailed page, right? And just the same fashion with out-of-box entity list. And yeah, I can really control if I want to render it on top of same page or if I want to render it in the next page. So that's by this Boolean flag. I'll just say it yes, and then update template. All I need to do is come back, clear my cache, and refresh this. Right? And then I click on this now. So yeah, this opened it in the new page instead of the same page. So that's my third control, and I found these controls quite helpful. And there are other controls also, but these were the main ones which I wanted to showcase today. And because I see a lot of value in it, and they solve some complex problems, and they just reduce a lot of our coding stuff to a matter of configuring it in just a max half an hour, right? So yeah, at this point, I want to go back to my this control because it's still asking me that why it's not working right. So let's see what mess we did in it, and we'll just change this. And when it starts working, we'll go back and yeah, so I'll copy this, take it here, let's clear my cache, and go to the sample control. Okay, so this. Okay, let's just do this thing, and I'll just take data. Yeah, so this one is working fine. So yeah, somehow I did some mistakes. So let's do this thing simple. We'll come back here, and I'll just replace it and make it more simpler. Instead of using the object notation, let's use the simple jQuery append and try to create the same control again. All right, I got why it was not working. So yeah, that was my mistake while looking at the code. Yeah, so this is my mistake. Just using this here, but I forgot to return this. So it was always returning an empty array path. Let's come here. And yeah, save this, come back, clear our cache, and let's see whether it embarrasses this time or not. Perfect, yeah, so now it just rendered. So yeah, so that's how we can use our fetch data service from Liquid Code to render, right, anything that we want. So just creating the data layer aside, and this just really gives us a way to focus on the core component rather than worrying about how to fetch data. So that's handled by a single abstraction layer. Okay, so yeah, this is with respect to all my controls. I have one more control that I want to show you. It's not ready. Its configuration is not ready, but I have it here on my portal. So one other requirement that I get is there's a complex structure of account hierarchy within portals and in some of the projects. And really the customers want to have the capability to drill down into the accounts that are underneath their level. So for example, I'm logged into this portal and my account is tied to this Hitachi Solutions Global. So I really wanted to have a capability where I can drill down to all the accounts that are there within my hierarchy, right? So you can see Hitachi Solution Global has these two regions, APAC and NA, and then NA has two organizations underneath it, America and Canada, and America has 2 offices, Canada also has 2 offices, and similarly, Hitachi Solutions India, it has these 4 offices, right? And one other thing, what I've seen clients asking for, that they really wanted to have the drill down capability, and along with that, they wanted to see the related data also. So for example, now that I have this tree structured, I want to see the related issues that are assigned to my Hitachi Solutions Global. So the way this control would behave is we'll just click on the submenu, click on it, and I'll just load the related records. So yeah, this works with the other nodes also. So I'm planning to extend it. I'm using orgchart.js to construct this tree. I'm planning to replace that and create my tree totally custom, because this one requires a license. But just for demo purpose, I wanted to show you that how flexible or how creative we can get in terms of creating custom control on portals. And the way I'm planning to structure it is we'll have a configuration, and then we can just provide, okay, which type of related data we want. That related data will appear in the subnodes in the submenu, and then based on the fetch XML that we provided, it will render the related data. So yeah, so that's my plan ahead with respect to these controls. And with that, I think, yeah, I have all of my content covered. If there are any questions or anything that you want to ask, we can talk about it now. Yeah, thanks.
Excellent session, Saminder.
Yeah, thanks, Arpit.
Yep. You really put effort to extend the portal features and
There is a
customize
voice. There is an echo in your voice.
Sorry, I didn't get
Just give me a
you.
moment. Just give me a moment, Saminder.
Sure.
Can you hear me properly now? Hello?
Yep, we can hear you, Arpit.
Yeah, so I was talking to, like, it's a really excellent session, and you really put so much effort to extend your portal features and the customization to a new level. I think, but most of the folks, including me as well, has the same query, that what is the architecture behind all these controls you made, and how did you, write the code and create all these components and all these controls? Can you just give a bit highlight about that?
Right, so I'm using a blend of both Liquid, JavaScript to construct these of these controls, and this PCF control that I just showed you, it's written on React and Fluent UI, and the editor that I just showed you, it's the Monaco editor, and here everything is written into React and TypeScript, and internally this is generating my Liquid plus my JavaScript code, right, which my portal components can react on. And the base to get data is always that fetch data service that I just talked about, right? So that is the fundamental thing for my entire portal. So I just have my data layer ready. Then I can create any control, whatever I want. I just need to hook the right query and with the right set of parameters, and it'll just give me the data back.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm just reading the questions on the chat.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, I think it would be a great time to go over that web template.
Sure.
Amazing code.
Right, so yeah, this is my fetch data service. So all I'm doing is getting this fetch XML, and then along with that select attributes, right? So then I'm determining, okay, whether it's a liquid call or it's a client side call. So if it's a liquid call, I'm just using the fetch XML as it is. And if it's not a liquid call, it means it's coming from client side. So I need to unescape the XML that I've escaped from my client side. So that's why you see the extra replace statements over here. So this is the custom escaper that I'm using, because the native one, it just adds too many characters, and I feel, right, it just creates more mess than solving it. So yeah, once we have that fetch ready, it just does a query, and here, based on the data that based on the parameters that I've got, I'm just constructing a dynamic JSON, and then based on the different types, I'm just specifying the attribute type also, and constructing that what we say key value bag of column name and column value. And this only works with the authenticated user. So I've just given this condition over here. So if the user is authenticated, then only this data service will work. Otherwise, I'll just return you this, yeah, unauthorized attempt. Hope this helps.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
She got really good acknowledgement, Saminder. Gaganjot Kaur saying wonderful session, Shaminder. Mozam Badani, great session. Harry saying excellent. Tarun, great session. Varsha Deshpande, great session, excellent stuff. So I think we got the really good acknowledgement.
Yeah. Just one more question, just to confirm this. So with the web template
Right.
app, the app that you've got, so basically you've created a PCF control using
Right.
React Is that what you're saying? And
right,
then
yeah. So this one is this one is my React plus Fluent UI based PCF control.
okay, so
Yeah.
you're automatically creating the web templates,
Right, right, yeah.
generating the code inside. Yes, that's amazing.
Right. Yep,
Cool.
you're right.
Thank you.
All right. So yeah, if we have other questions.
Any questions? Other? I think we have covered all the questions and we got the really good feedback. So excellent, Sharminder. This was a really good session, and you put so much effort, it seems, and so much great stuff you have covered. I think it was, there are a lot of things are new for me as well, that how we can extend the portal customization, the features. So it was really, really great session. Thanks a lot.
Right. Yep. Thanks all, and thanks Arpit for inviting me and giving the opportunity to come and share my experience. So in case if you guys have other questions which may come up after this session, you can always connect with me on LinkedIn. This is my personal email address, and if you have any complex requirements where you would like to just chat with me and get my opinion on it, feel free to do that, or you can always just come and say hi. Yeah. Thanks all. It was really good talking with you all.
Thank you.
Over to you, Arpit. Thanks.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Yeah, you too. Bye.